Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about You People. You People is an American romantic comedy that tells the story of Ezra, a podcast co-host who works a boring broker job in Los Angeles. He has a chance encounter with a woman named Amira, who he decides to ask out on a date, and the two eventually hit things off and start a relationship. However, things become complicated due to the cultural differences between Ezra and Amira, with the former being Jewish and the latter being a black Muslim. Both Ezra and Amira's families end up at odds with each other, as the two do their best to support their love for each other while dealing with their families and societal expectations. I appreciate the effort that was put into this movie to make it more than just another rom-com, but it still ends up being exactly that, and far from a riveting one. It's not terrible, but it's not all that great either, sitting squarely in the middle of mediocre territory in spite of its good intentions. I think Jonah Hill's performance as Ezra is ultimately what saves this movie. His personality isn't all that different from his roles in other movies, and his style of humor may not be for everyone, but I love it. There's just something about the way he delivers his lines that I can't help but laugh whenever I hear them. As for the character of Ezra as a whole, I liked him well enough as a protagonist. It's interesting to see him navigate his Jewish background and who he feels he is as a person in general. And while his struggle isn't really as deep as it could have been as far as his culture goes, like I said before, the movie makes up for this with Jonah Hill's charisma. The female lead in Ezra's love interest Amira was okay by comparison, but definitely not as memorable. Like with Ezra, she tries to navigate her family upbringing, this time as a black Muslim, and winning her father's approval for things she does, which is interesting, but I don't feel like it's pronounced all that much. She just doesn't have a lot of depth behind her as a character compared to Ezra, which I find really odd because there is a lot of potential to explore her character between her overbearing father and her personal career ambitions. It's not that she's performed badly, her actress Laura London is good enough in the role, but for whatever reason her character never develops all that much outside of the relationship. And this is definitely where most of this movie's focus is put into, and rightfully so. The pair have great on-screen chemistry together, as they spend quite a bit of time getting to know each other as opposed to falling in love at first sight, and this makes it feel like a more realistic and genuine love story. They're able to work past their initial differences just based on attraction alone. It's not until later on when their families become more involved that reality hits and they have to start asking uncomfortable questions to each other and figure out how to answer them, which does result in some funny situations occurring between them. And I enjoyed seeing the way the relationship ebbed and flowed over the course of the story. It still proceeds in fairly predictable fashion, which is typical for the genre, but it never comes off as mean-spirited toward either person, and they both learn more about themselves through each other, which allows for a lot of room as far as character development goes. Unfortunately though, as I hinted at earlier, the movie doesn't take much advantage at developing either Ezra or Amira. The movie's commentary behind both of them are little more than surface-level observations of both Jewish and black culture, and feel forced as far as how it tries to generate laughs for either of them. In Ezra's case, the movie looks at how politically correct and yet insensitive his parents can be regarding their son dating a black woman. There are some intriguing areas the movie treads as far as exploring how someone can overcompensate in interacting with someone instead of just treating them like a normal human being, but most of the time the movie tries too hard to make them woefully ignorant, which comes off as silly and undermines its messages. Conversely, Amira's family is staunchly conservative and wants her to date within her race, which causes awkward tension when Ezra does meet her parents. Again, the movie's heart is in the right place, this time with trying to promote interracial relationships amid familial tension, but Amira's family is so stereotypically antagonistic that it's hard to take them seriously. The parents in general were lacking in depth. Even though Ezra and Amira both have mothers and fathers, it only feels like one parent is ever involved for each, with Ezra's mother being played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Amira's father being played by Eddie Murphy. Now, both of them are okay in their respective roles, but I didn't understand why their characters had so much focus. Ezra's dad, played by David Duchovny, is relegated to a dumb gag involving Exhibit, while Amira's mom, played by Nia Long, barely has anything to do in the movie at all. Neither of them feel like they have any say in how the relationship proceeds, and I just found myself wondering why they were there. It's a shame because the movie seems to breeze past the rest of the ensemble cast members too, with actors like Anthony Anderson, Rhea Perlman, and Mike Epps just to name a few. Although most of them are funny and inject some energy into the story in their individual scenes, they're never around long or often enough to make a lasting impression. And this leads into the comedy portion of the movie, which, as with everything else in it, tended to be hit or miss. It mostly consists of witty dialogue attempting to take advantage of the awkward cultural exchange between Ezra and Amira's relationship, as well as their own cultures in general, and some of it is funny, but other times not so much. The biggest problem I have with the dialogue is how often it goes all over the place as far as what's talked about and how long it goes on for. Ezra, Amira, and their parents would go on lengthy diatribes regarding race and faith, and more often than not, they made things more dramatic than a rom-com like this should be. However, I do have to say that there were some lines that had me rolling with laughter. Most of what Ezra says is great, but my favorite line comes from his mother, who goes to a party with Amira and her friends, and she notices a woman's tattoo on her right breast commemorating her deceased boyfriend where her heart is, and she wonders out loud why the tattoo is on the wrong side. As the movie progresses, it does actually get more intriguing with the religious and racial elements, even though it still remains shallow. Ezra and Amira become increasingly more immersed in awkward situations where they have to get to know each other's families and deal with their own behaviors, and it is amusing to see the two try to endure these scenarios. Things like culture clashes, societal expectations, and generational differences in thinking are all brought up and connected to Ezra and Amira in different ways. I admire the ambition behind this movie and how it tackles all of these concepts, but I felt that it was unfocused, bit off more than it could chew, and had trouble balancing its tone as far as when to be serious and when to be funny. Overall, You People is an average rom-com that doesn't go as far with its central concept as it could have. If you like romantic comedies that have a social message behind them and you don't mind seeing one being more formulaic in nature, you might enjoy checking this out. I like that movies like this at least try to do something different with the rom-com genre, but this one didn't quite do it for me. It's still fun in short bursts, but the jokes didn't always land and it often took itself too seriously, which hurt my enjoyment of it. What did you think about this movie? Did you find it tackle its social aspects well, or do you also think it could have been done better? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of You People. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Norwegian horror movie Viking Wolf. Bye bye!